WIBTA, if I report the nurse practitioner at urgent care to HR for basically slut-shaming me. I've /F21 recently encountered a new sexual partner. We used a condom, but afterwards I felt a little uneasy as to this was the first time I have ever hooked up with someone I just met. My previous sexual partners have all been someone I have developed deep connections with in some kind of way. While condoms greatly reduce the chance of contracting a STI, it cannot provide absolute protection. A few days ago, I noticed my discharge changed to a white substance that's different from my normal discharge, and the first thing that came to my head was an STD. I have never had one before, and I have no idea the symptoms, but an STD was all I could think about. I went to an urgent care because I wanted to see if there was maybe a simpler answer to this problem, yeast infection or UTI, and if not, I wanted to send my urine off for an STD screening. My doctor asked me a series of questions. When did you become sexually active? When was your last sexual partner? How many sexual partners, etc.? All of which I was upfront and honest about so she could better treat me. It came time for her to make a diagnosis and tell me the best course of action. She says based on my symptoms, I am showing hallmark signs of a yeast infection, but she will send my urine off for a culture and STD screen along with a swab from my vagina so she can tell what type of yeast is growing down there. As I'm about to get my keys and stand up to walk out, she says, "Dear, will you sit down for just another moment?" I sat back down and looked up at her, curious as to what she wanted to talk about. With all of that being said, you're 21 years old, you really need to guard and protect your character. I looked at her like, what the fuck? And she continued, well, you know, guys get to have sex all they want and nothing bad comes out of it for them, but you know us as women, we can't be doing that as much because we have to protect our character. At this point, I was pretty fucking angry. You could tell by my silence and the way my lips were pressed together. I thought that maybe it couldn't get any worse. Then she proceeded to say, you're going to want to have kids one day, and the way you're living your life now could really hurt you and your chances of having a kid with a good man. I was open and honest with this woman in hopes that it would help her better treat me and in turn I get slut-shamed for it. I posted this in a forum about sexual education, and I was getting advice to report her to HR. I don't want to go after anybody's job, but I don't want other women to have to go through this same thing just for having sex. Will I be the asshole if I report her to HR, or should I leave it alone? Edit. For everybody asking, I was literally in too much shock to say anything to her at the moment. I just kind of stared at her because I immediately felt embarrassed and regretted the information I shared with her so openly. So after a couple of seconds she said, I appreciate your openness and honesty though. Like that mattered after anything she just said, weary face, and opened the door for me to leave, so I just said thanks and left. I was too embarrassed and in too much shock to say anything in the moment. Trust me, I wish I would have, but I wasn't even thinking about going off on her. I was just embarrassed. Also, she was a nurse practitioner. I know a couple of times I referred to her as a doctor, but her official title was NP. And for everyone slut-shaming me even further, sorry, insecure that I'm having more fun than you face blowing a kiss update before I start off with the update. I want to address some of the negative comments in the original post. 1. I am not heartless, and in the original post I even directly said I did not want to go for her job. That was never my intention, and I even explicitly said that. 2. Forever man calling me a slut. You're obviously insecure in the idea that women can have sex for pleasure just as you can. I also explained how this was my first time ever hooking up with somebody I just met, so closing my legs or quit being easy doesn't fucking apply. In Game of Thrones, every single whore had one thing in common, and that's that they enjoyed sex. So if enjoying sex and using it for pleasure makes me a whore, then sign me the fuck up. 3. For teenage girls, young girls sexually active. If you come across this post, just know that it is very unprofessional for healthcare providers to pass judgment on your sexual life. What you decide to do with your body is really nobody's business despite what other people are saying on this thread. Now to the update. I called the urgent care and asked to speak with either a patient advocate or NP supervisor. They didn't have a patient advocate, and the doctor overseeing the NPs was out, so they let me talk to the manager of the clinic. First and foremost, I explained to the manager that I in no means wanted any disciplinary action taken. I did not want her to lose her job, but maybe be given a talk or pip to improve her service and not use personal beliefs or judgment when taking care of patients. I explained to her everything that happened, and before I could even say who the NP was, she knew exactly who I was talking about, which confirmed that she's most likely been this way towards other patients previously. I then explained how I confided in her and that I came into the office for medical advice and not personal judgment, and her using my openness to pass judgment has made me weary about being open with doctors in the future. I explained that her words didn't hurt me, just my future interactions with health care providers and future interactions with her other women patients. The lady was very nice, and once my complaint was heard, she said she'd call the doctor, her supervisor, right away and to expect a call from him on my cell. She also said she was placing a note and that the NP wouldn't be back in the office until next Monday. With all of that being said, thank you to everyone for your advice. You've truly been so helpful. And for the people calling me a slut for this, I hope to God this same thing doesn't happen to your daughter, your mother, your sister, your aunt, etc.